Iran is back at the negotiating table in Vienna after months of stalled talks between JCPOA party members, but primarily with the U.S. delegation. The U.S. for weeks warning publicly that their patience is wearing thin. Meanwhile, Iran saying there's no return to the deal without a lifting of all sanctions against the Islamic Republic first by the U.S. So here to discuss is Mohammed Marandi. He is a professor at the University of Tehran and party to these talks. He's joining us out of Vienna today. Professor, so first, I'm sure the viewers are wondering, what are you doing in Vienna, and how is a university professor a participant in these negotiations? Tell us.
In 2015, during the Vienna talks back then, which lasted 3 weeks, the then Foreign Minister, Dr. Zarif, asked me to accompany him and to deal with issues such as what I'm dealing with now, being on your show, and the current chief negotiator, Dr. Bagheri, this time around has asked me to accompany him as well. So I'm here sitting with you as a result of this invitation as well.
Oh, wonderful. So they've asked you to return and revive your role from back in 2015. I didn't realize that you were a party to all of that. So it's interesting to hear somebody on the inside for this. Professor, under the original JCPOA, which you were there for, Iran's uranium enrichment was capped off at 3.67%. Since the deal was effectively scrapped by the U.S. in 2018, Iran has enriched 39 pounds of uranium to 60%, which is short of weapons-grade 90%, according to the IAEA. This obviously making the U.S. a little bit uncomfortable. If doing so risks the deal, why would Iran do that?
Well, Iran was abiding by the deal from the beginning, and the International Atomic Energy Agency reports show that. The United States was in violation from day one. From day one, Obama began violating the deal. And when Trump came to power, the Iranian central bank was unable to function in coordination with the international financial sector because Obama wouldn't have it. Behind the scenes, he was forcing banks and the international financial system not to work with Iran, which was a clear violation of the deal. And then, of course, Trump tore the deal. He exited the deal. And when he tore up the deal and left, the Europeans followed him, and they violated all of their obligations as well. The Iranians, for a whole year after this, were implementing the deal in full. And then only after a year did they begin to decrease their commitments. And the decreasing of their commitments, and this is a very important point, was done in accordance with the deal, because Articles 26 and 36 allow Iran to halt, decrease, and ultimately halt their commitments if the other side is violating the deal. So the only side that until today has been abiding by its commitments is Iran, within the deal, abiding by the deal, I mean. So, but the reason why the Iranians began to increase the enrichment capacity, as well as the degree in which they enrich uranium, as well as the whole program as itself, is because that's Iran's right. Iran can enrich over 90% uranium if it wants. In fact, the Tehran experimental reactor, which makes medical isotopes for cancer patients, used to use fuel that was enriched over 90%. So if the United States and the Europeans want Iran to put a cap on its enrichment, then they shouldn't have left the deal. And I think the Iranians have every right to put pressure on the United States and the Europeans in any possible way, especially since the Iranians are abiding by the provisions within the deal, to force them back to the negotiating table. So ultimately what happened is that they left the table, not Iran. It is time for them to come back if they want to restart the deal.
And Professor, Israel's defense minister says Iran, and this is a quote, is dashing towards a nuclear weapon. How much influence are the Israelis having on these talks, especially on the U.S. delegation?
Well, the Israelis have been saying Iran is on the verge of developing a nuclear weapon since, I think, 1992. And they've been saying it's months away, sometimes weeks away, sometimes a couple of years away, and they just repeat the same story. The Israeli regime has a huge influence over the United States, and the Israelis have brought about great harm to the United States because they've forced foolish policies upon the American people that have only harmed the country. For example, the Israeli regime was a strong advocate of the invasion of Iraq. Netanyahu was one of the people who encouraged the United States to attack the country. And of course, we all know that the Israeli regime, the apartheid regime, has a large number of nuclear weapons. It's not even a part of the NPT. But Iran, I mean, let me be blunt. If Iran wanted to have nuclear weapons, it would have had them many years ago. The Iranian leader said that on a number of occasions. Iran has no intention to have these weapons, but Iran is not going to give up its sovereignty. So the Americans left the deal. If they want to restart the deal, they have to go back and implement the deal. And implementing the deal means that the Americans have to remove all the maximum pressure sanctions, every single one of them, which they don't want to do. And this is the interesting thing. Biden was attacking Trump for the maximum pressure campaign, which targets Iranian women and children, by the way. But now that he's president, he's pursuing the exact same policy. And like Trump, he wants to keep some of the sanctions in place, the post-nuclear deal sanctions, and Iran is saying that's unacceptable. You can't, if you want the nuclear deal, then you have to abide by the nuclear deal in full.
All right, we will leave it right there. Professor Mohammed Marandi, I look forward to speaking with you again, perhaps after these talks wrap up for the 7th round. Thank you so much.
Thank you.